Okay, good morning, everybody. We'll continue uh, the introduction part of the HTML, and today we'll see what is W3C, that is World Wide Web Consortium. As we looked into this in earlier class, W3C is the organization which is responsible for maintaining the standards or recommendations or specifications regarding the web. W3C is the main standard organization of the World Wide Web, and it promotes compatibility of W3C, produces recommendations, or you can call them as a specification. So, how the different components of the web should be working, should be interacting, all those things for everything, W3C comes up with the standards and specifications, and the web developers or the browser manufacturers, they can look into this specification, and accordingly they can develop their particular products. In 1998, W3C turned its attention to a new specification called XHTML 1.0. So, XHTML is the extensible hypertext markup language, which was the version of HTML, and it used a stricter XML, that is extensible markup language. So, the rules that were whatever the standards they came up with, the rules, the syntax rules were very strict. Before XHTML 1.0, the browsers were like they were designed more forgiving. Like if any HTML element or any component is not properly written by the web developer, uh, still it will not give any kind of a syntax error. It will show up. So what used to happen is, if there are any issues with the syntax of any kind of a HTML element, what will happen is, even though there is a syntax problem, the browser will be forgiving. Either some of the browsers will show the data or the HTML document in a different way. Some will show the actual error. Some will just ignore those. So that was the problem. The views that we were getting for the web applications were not consistent. Okay, because browsers were very forgiving. So W3C thought, if it makes the syntax rules more stricter, means it will not it will give a syntax error, so that the web developers, they will comply to the whatever the syntax rules that is given by the W3C. That was the intention of the making the syntax rules more stricter. The goal of XHTML with its strict rules was to make page rendering more predictable by forcing web authors to create web pages without syntax errors. So earlier to this, as I told, the predictability of the page was not sure, because if there are any kind of a syntax error, the page how we will see in different kinds of a browser, it was unpredictable. So in order to make the page rendering more predictable, okay, to have the consistency in their display, they thought of making the syntax rules very strict. The XML based syntax rules for HTML are easy to follow. The main rules are like this. Lowercase tag names, all the tag names will be in the lowercase. Attributes always within the quotes. So if there are any kind of attributes for the any tags, it will be inside the quotes. And all elements must have closing element, or be a self-closing, means every element should have a opening as well as the closing element. That was the those are the main rules. There were to help the web authors. There were two versions that were created for the XHTML. One was called as the XHTML 1.0 strict, and one was called XHTML 1.0 transitional. So why they created two is, this is the one, the strict version is the one which will completely enforce the syntax rules. If there is any mistake in the syntax of any of the element, it will give the syntax error. It will not display the page. So that is how this particular version worked. This was more kind of a transitional. Some of the web applications, some of the organization, it was very difficult for them to directly move to the XHTML 1.0 strict. So they went in a transitional mode where they can gradually move to the XHTML 1.0 stricter version. The strict version was meant to be rendered by a browser using the strict syntax rules and tag support described by the W3C XHTML 1.0 strict specification. So whatever was the specification given by the W3C as per the XHTML 1.0 version, that particular syntax has to be followed exactly. Okay, strictly it has to be followed, otherwise there will be a syntax error. The transitional recommendation is more forgiving flavor of XHTML. So this was a very strict version where it will give error if the syntax rules for the tags are not followed. Simply it will give the syntax error. This version, transitional version, was more forgiving. It will not completely give the syntax error. It will give some options to make a temporary transitions. Transitional recommendation is more forgiving flavor of XHTML and was meant to act as a temporary transition to eventually global adaptation of the XHTML script. So this version was more, it will help the organization which will slowly move to the stricter version of the XHTML. Standards movement around 2000, the focus in the professional web development community was on standards, that is on limiting oneself to the W3C specification for XHTML. So during 2000, all the professional development community, they wanted to follow the strictly the W3C specification, and that is how they started moving towards that as a standard. And for checking the whether particular web application is following the standards or not, validators were created. What were the validators? Validators, you can punch in your URL or web application link, and you can do the validation of that particular website or the web application. So HTML validator will list out if there are any deviations from the given rules. So this is one example of the validator, that is the screenshot. A key part of the standard movement in the web development community of 2000s was use of HTML validators as a means of verifying whether that web page markup followed the rules of XHTML transitional or strict. So these validators, you will just give your URL wherever it is hosted. You once you give and you submit it, it will check the complete web application and it will tell whether it follows the standards that is defined by the XHTML 1.0, whether it follows complete strict version or whether transitional version. So this is the example. So here you can see there is an address. Or we can click on this link. So you can see it shows http validator.w3.org. That is the web application which will do the validation. Okay, so you can see this page. So you can see validator.w3.org. You provide your link here. Okay, provide the link and click on check. Then it will do the validation whether that particular web application follows the XHTML syntax rules or not, whether it follows a stricter version or the transitional version or none of them. Whatever the deviations are there, it will show up. Next, XHTML 2.0 and what WG. This is a working group. We will see what is this working group. In the mid 2000s, XHTML 2.0 was proposed, and it came up with a lot of changes. And some of the changes, like The backwards compatibility with HTML and XHTML 1.0 was dropped. Okay, so the biggest or substantial change, what would we say, is a XHTML 2.0 stop the backward compatibility. Means whichever the application that follows XHTML 2.0, it will not be backward compatible with HTML, the original HTML, or the XHTML 1.0 version. Browser would become significantly less forgiving of invalid markup. So browsers will make sure that if certain tag syntax is not written correctly, it will make that particular tag as invalid, and it will show the syntax error. So the browsers became more unforgiving. So every web developer has to follow whatever the syntaxes, whatever the standards that are given in the XHTML 2.0. And around the same time, developers at Opera and Mozilla formed a group, Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, that is WATWG. That group, they started working on some other, they started working in parallel with W3C. The reason for that, they did not like some of the changes that were introduced with the XHTML 2.0, and one of the change that was done with the 2.0 was stopping the backward compatibility. And this particular group thought stopping the backward compatibility is not a good move, because there were a lot of applications there, those were written in HTML and XHTML 1.0, directly moving into 2.0, and without getting support for the previous version, it was not a good idea of making development in this area. So they thought, like, they started working on the standards in parallel with the W3C. This group was not convinced that the W3C's embrace of XML and its abandonment, backward compatibility, was the best way forward for the web. So that is the reason they started working on, parallelly they started working on the other standards. During 2009, W3C stopped the work on XHTML 2.0 and instead adopted the work done by the WATWG group and named it as a HTML5. So by 2009, W3C realized stopping the backward compatibility was not a good move, considering the growth of the web. So what they did is they stopped the work on the XHTML 2.0 standards, and instead whatever the work done by the WATWG group, they adopted all those work and they named it as HTML5. That is how the whatever the HTML5 we have today, that is how we got those standards. So there are three main aims of the HTML5. One is specify unambiguously how browsers should deal with invalid markup. So the one of the main features here is if there is any invalid markup, browser should unambiguously, it will should tell how it will deal with that. Means there should not be any ambiguity in dealing with any invalid markup. So that is the first thing. So this gave a option for each of the browsers how they are going to deal with that. The second one is provide an open non-proprietary programming framework via JavaScript for creating a rich web applications. So they also proposed to provide an open source, okay, non-proprietary, means it is not owned by anybody, it is open to use for everybody, which can be used for creating a very rich web applications which has a lot of interaction, a lot of options where we can give a rich functionality to the users. Then be backward compatible with the existing web. So whatever is there, it should be compatible with us. So HTML5, the biggest advantage with the HTML5 is it is backward compatible. whatever the applications that are developed so far using earlier HTML, XHTML 1.0, so though it will support all those, so it is backward compatible. While parts of HTML5 are still being finalized, all of the major browser manufacturers have at least partially embraced the HTML5. So HTML5 still it is evolving. So HTML5 is it is like a living language. It is continuously being changed, adopted with the new things. So while this still HTML5 parts were getting finalized, industry embraced it, all the browser manufacturers embraced it, and they started changing their browser. Certainly not all browser and all versions support every feature of HTML5. So whatever the browsers we have, all browsers may not support all the functionality of the HTML5, but they partially support some of the HTML5 functionality. This is in fact by design. HTML in HTML5 is now a living language. That is, it's a language that evolves and develops over time. So it's a continuously evolving. As such, every browser will support gradually increasing subset of HTML5 capabilities. So every browser, they will have with their future versions, they will be continuously supporting major subsets of the HTML5, and eventually they will support the 100% HTML5 capabilities. So this is the scenario of the browsers which support the HTML5. You can see this is the full HTML5 support. Means whatever the available browsers we have, almost 75% of the browsers which are available, they fully support HTML5, and a big portion they support partially, and there is a smaller subset of browsers which do not have any HTML5 support. Next is HTML syntax. HTML documents are composed of textual content and HTML elements. So I told you, like when we have a HTML document, what it will comprise of, it will have some textual content, whatever we want to display on the page, and then we have the structure, that is the HTML elements. So we have text as well as the HTML elements, and HTML element can contain it can contain text, other elements, or be empty. It is identified in the HTML document by the tags. So HTML element, either it can contain a text in it, or it can contain another HTML element, or it can be empty. So any of those things are possible, and HTML tags are identified. HTML is identified by the tags in any HTML document. HTML elements can also contain attributes. An HTML attribute is a name value pair that provides more information about the HTML element. So, HTML element can also comprise of attributes. So, what is an attribute? Attribute will give more information about that particular tag. Yeah, I will show you the code snippet is there. I will show the example, and using that particular attribute we can give a value, and that is how we can have a more information or more characteristics to be added for the any HTML tags. And when we have the attributes will be always in the name value pair. So we will have a attribute name, and that particular attribute has a value. For simple example is a for table we have a background color. Okay, bg color is the attribute, and is equal to, you can give any of the color. So black, blue, white. So that is the value. So you will have a attribute name and corresponding value will be there. In XHTML, attribute values had to be enclosed in a quotes. Okay, that was the requirement of XHTML. However, in HTML5, that is optional. You need not have the attribute values enclosed in a quotes, but it is a good practice to have the attribute values inside a quote. Okay, so this is the a small subset of the HTML tags. What we can do using the HTML, and what HTML, how HTML can be HTML elements can be used to create a web application or the web page. So first one is the insert image using the img tag. So suppose if in your web application you want to display an image, so you can insert a image using this img tag. So all the html elements, it will have a angle bracket, open angle bracket and closing angle bracket. Inside that, the whatever the text, that will identify what kind of a element it is. So inside the angle bracket img, this particular html tag can be used in a html document to insert any kind of a image. And next one is, if you want to include any links in your html document, suppose you want to route it to certain other website, then you will say click here. Okay, and that click here, that particular text, suppose if you will say to visit wikipedia, click here, you will have a text called click here. When you click on that click here text, it will take you to the wikipedia website. So that particular item can be created using the link or the anchor tag. So this is an anchor tag. Within the angle bracket we have a letter a. Using this we can create a, we can provide a hyperlink. There are different other options. Either you can point it to the external website or internal resource, a file, image, all those things we can do. So those different options we will see when we learn about this anchor tag. Next one, we can create list. Okay, if you want to display a list of items in your website, you can use these tags. UL inside the angle bracket, U stands for the unordered list. Okay, if you want to display the list which is unordered, you can use that. Normally lists are either ordered or unordered. So for example of an unordered list is, in an engineering college, the different departments that are available, there is no logical order there, right? So every department is like equally important, so there is no order required. Okay, that is example of a unordered list. And ordered list, okay, ol, suppose there are students, many students in a class, and you, if you, for easy handling of that, you can have them because if you want to search, because suppose you have a web application where you are displaying the name of the student and their results, it is always better to have the name of the students as a ordered list, so that the searching becomes very easy. Then you can use the ol, that is ordered list. And these are the list items li. We will see how to use this. As of now, just you can see this and understand. These are the possible things you can do. You can insert images, we can insert links, we can have the lists and create different headings. Okay, so in html we have a different levels of headings. So that starts from the h1, h2, so on, h6. H1 is the highest level of the heading that we can use in the html. And if you want to define any kind of a metadata information, we have a tag, html tag called meta. Okay, so that can be used, and there are many such html tags are available in html5. So here this is an example of one element and how attributes are used. We can see here this particular example is a link, providing a link or an anchor. You can see a in the previous create link with the anchor tag. Okay, inside the angle bracket letter a, using this we can create a link. So we have open angle bracket, then we have the element name, that is this is the anchor element name, and after that what you see is a name and the value pair and closing angle. What is this? This is a attribute, okay, and this is the attribute name href, okay, where this link will reference, that is the information it will give. Href is equal to, inside the double quotes we have http colon forward slash www.centralpark.com. So it's some website, it is linking to this particular site. So this complete, from starting the angle bracket, from the open angle bracket to close angle bracket, this complete thing is called as a open tag, okay. So every ht element must have a open tag as well as a closing tag, and this complete from here to here, this is opening tag and this is the closing tag. Normally the closing tag, inside the angle bracket we will have a forward slash followed by the element name. In this case it is forward slash a, and this complete thing is called as a closing tag. In HTML5 every element will have a opening tag as well as closing tag, and as I told you, HTML5 is a forgiving type of specifications. So sometimes you don't follow this, you might not get any error, okay. And sometimes it will display properly, sometimes it will display distorted, sometimes it may not show anything. It depends on the browser, okay. If you are trying the same thing with the error on Chrome, Internet Explorer, Mozilla and some other Firefox, it can show differently, the display would be in different, okay. So that is how this is the element, this is the attribute. Attribute has a name and the value. Name is equal to, inside the double quotes we have the value, okay, closing angle bracket, and this is called as a opening tag, and this is the closing tag, and in between the opening tag and the closing tag we can have some kind of a text, okay. So this is the content, what you want to show there. So here we have it as a Central Park. When we load this page, okay, what you will see is a Central Park, and whenever you take the mouse, okay, on top of that text, it will show a link. So you will be able to click. When you click on that link, it will take you to this particular website. Okay, it will route you to that particular website. And this is the one example of a empty element. So here the element name is br, open bracket br, and we have the a forward slash, trailing slash and angle bracket. This is a empty element. What it will do is it will provide an additional line. It will go into the next line. It is very similar to new line, okay. If you are displaying something on the uh, let us say you have a paragraph, and after the paragraph you want to move to the next line, then you can use the break, br. Nesting html elements. Any questions so far? If you have any questions you can just interrupt me. All right. So nesting HTML elements. So HTML elements are always nested. Okay. So the whole structure of the HTML document is a nested elements. If you are exposed to some of the HTML, you already know that we start the HTML document with the opening HTML tag and closing HTML tag. Opening HTML tag, how do we write it? Open angle bracket, then html text, closing angle bracket. Inside that we will have all other tags. There is a header tag, body tag. Inside the body tag there are many different tags are there. Then at the end of the document we will have angle bracket, forward slash, html text and closing angle bracket. So often HTML element will contain other HTML elements. In such case, the container element is said to be a parent of a contained or a child element. We will see the example. Means whichever is the outer in the nesting, whichever is in the outer element, that element is called as a parent element. and whichever element which is inside an another HTML element, that is called as a child element. And the other word for that is a descendant. Either you can call it as the child element as a descendant element, and the parent element we can call it as a ancestor element. We will see the example, then it will be very clear. So this is a simple HTML document. It starts with the body tag. Okay, you can see here body tag. This is the opening tag of the body, and this is the closing tag of the body. So body tag opens here and it closes here. In between these two tags we have other elements. So you can see inside the body I have a paragraph. P stands for the paragraph element, P element. We will see every element in detail. This is just for understanding. So this is paragraph element P. It opens here and it closes, and inside the paragraph element I have some text and as well as some other HTML element. So it will say this is some. Again I have a HTML element strong text and closing strong element. So what it will do is when it displays on the browser, this is some and this will come as a bold. So basically it will come as a bold. And at the same level inside the body, P is opening and P is closing. Then we have a header element H1. This is the opening header element and this is the closing header element. And at the same level we have a division. Basically division is a container. You want to create a container or the division. This is the division opening HTML element. This is the closing division HTML element. Inside these two we have one more paragraph. Okay, paragraph open element and paragraph close element, and inside that we have another text as well as another child HTML element, that is span. Now if you see here, this is the parent. Okay, this is parent to paragraph h1 div. Okay, and even for whatever the subchilds it has. So this is the at the highest level, so we call it this as an ancestor. And you can see this is a parent of a paragraph and paragraph is a child of a body. And the whichever the tags are at the same level inside the body, paragraph, this header and this division, all these are at the same level, we call them as a siblings. Okay, siblings means they are at the same level. And inside the division we have one more HTML element. This is called as a child. Okay, and span is also child of division. So whichever is the child, okay, or the subchild, those are called as a descendants. Okay, descendants. And whichever is the at the parent level, they are called as a ancestor. So you can say descendants goes like this. Body has three siblings, three childs. The paragraph, header 1 and division. And inside the first paragraph we have one more child strong. Inside the division we have paragraph, child, and for paragraph one more child is there, that is span. So this is how these are called. At lower level we have the descendants, at the higher level we have the ancestors. Nesting HTML elements. In order to properly construct the hierarchy of elements, your browser expects each HTML nested element to be properly nested. So if whenever you are using the nesting of the HTML elements, because in order to have a very good HTML documents, we need to have HTML documents nested inside other HTML documents. So when you are using the nesting, you have to have the proper usage of the nesting. So what is the proper usage of the nesting? This is the example of the correct usage. We have a parent here, header, and inside this parent, that is header HTML tag, we have a text as well as some other HTML tag. When you use another HTML tag inside a parent, you have to make sure that child closing tag is inside the closing tag of the parent. Okay, so this is the opening tag of the child, and the opening closing tag of the child should close before the closing of the HTML closing of the parent HTML tag. So this is the example of incorrect. You can see the parent is opening here and parent is closing here, and the child is opening here and it is closing here. This is the incorrect nesting. For correct nesting, the child should close before the closing of the parent. Next is a semantic markup. As you know, semantic means the meaning. Okay, it is associated with the meaning of the particular HTML element. Over the past decade, a strong and broad consensus has grown around the belief that HTML documents should only focus on the structure of the document. This is very important. So, how our HTML document should be done is the HTML should focus only on the structure of the document, how it is displayed, how it should look like. It should not worry about that. It should focus on the structure of the HTML document, how the paragraph should be, and how the division should be, what is the different containers, where the image should go. So it should focus more on the structure of the HTML document, and the display, how the looks, display or the looks, how it looks, whether it should be in this particular color, whether it should be of this size. All those things should be left to the CSS, that is cascading style sheet. Information about how the content should look when it is displayed in the browser is best left to the CSS, that is cascading style sheets. So that is how now we can separate the two things out. One is the HTML document. It should focus on the structure of the document, and CSS will take care of the how the look and feel of those content on the browser is taken care by the cascading style sheet. So CSS is exclusively used for styling the different HTML elements, how it should look like. So that is taken care by the CSS. As a consequence, beginning HTML authors are often counseled to create semantic HTML document. So semantic HTML documents where the focus is on the structure of the document, okay, not on the how it is displayed. That is, HTML documents should not describe how visually present the content, but only describe its contents, structural semantics, or meaning. So structure is a vital way of communicating information in a paper and electronic document. So whenever you are seeing any kind of a paper or the electronic document, you will see the structure. So based on the structure, the information can be easily absorbed. Okay, so that structure is very, very important. Similar to that, in HTML documents also, the structure is very, very important. All of the tags we will examine in this presentations are used to describe the basic structural information in a document, such as articles. These are the different HTML tags that we can use. Articles, headings, lists, paragraphs, links, images, navigation, footers, and so on. So using these structural elements, we can structure the a document. And when we have a HTML document which focuses more on the structure, it gives a lot of benefits. Okay, there are many benefits that can be used if a particular web application is developed using the semantic markup. So some of the advantages are mentioned here. Eliminating presentation oriented markup and writing semantic HTML markup has a variety of important advantages. That is, keeping the structural part separate from the how it is presented on the particular page. When if we can separate those two, it gives, these are the different advantages. It helps with the maintenance. It helps with the faster loading of the web pages. Accessibility will increase, and for search engine optimization, that is SEO, it will be very very easy and very intuitive to get the right kind of information. For the maintainability, semantic markup is easier to update and change than web pages that contain great deal of presentation markup. So it is very easy to make the changes or any kind of updates if it follows the semantic markup. Then faster semantic web pages are typically quicker to author and faster to download. So that is the advantage. Accessibility. So if you use the semantic markup, it is very easy to access the particular information from the website. Visiting a web page using a voice reading software can be very frustrating experience if the site does not use the semantic markup. If you use the semantic markup, the voice reading software can easily understand, okay, what is the content of your HTML, and it will be easy to navigate in that fashion. Then search engine optimization, semantic markup provides better instruction for search engines. It tells them what things are important content on the site. So SEO, you should always write your web application uh, so that search engine will easily find the information on your website. So that is how you can become one of the top searched web application. So when you are doing any kind of a search in Google search or any kind of other Yahoo search, when we have certain words, let's say your web application is based on some sports, let us say cricket. When user searches for cricket, if your search engine is very well designed, then it can get easily the information out of your website saying that your whole website is about the cricket. Then it will be easily listed on the top. So that is how you will get into the top, and you will get more hits. Okay, obviously when people see the listing of the website, they normally they tend to click on the first five links that are showing up, because the first five links, if they satisfy their information, they will not go further. So that is how for every web application they are designed, so that search engines can easily find the information on their website, and whenever there is a relevant word is typed for the search, your website will show up if there is a if it is relevant to your web application. Structure of the HTML. Structure of the HTML we will see in the next class.